Hello, receiving teachers, receiving students, and 6Es. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, before we go on to our next lesson for today, let's recap by correcting the exercise from our previous lesson. So, I will be selecting students from each group if you have completed your exercise to quickly come up and display how you have drawn your diagrams representing those two fractions that you were asked to complete. So 6Es and receiving students, we will now correct the exercise from our previous lesson. So looking around, most groups have completed their exercise by drawing the two diagrams. So put your hand up if your group is finished, and you can come up and display your diagram on the whiteboard. Yes? Okay, can I ask you to quickly come up and paste your diagram on the whiteboard? How you have drawn your diagram and how you have shaded part of that fraction. Okay, we have one group, they have used their pencil to shade in their fraction. Later we'll go through it together with the class to see which ones are correct. Any more other groups? We have one on the board. Fred, you come and put yours on the whiteboard. Okay, we have another one. Any more? Sixes, do we have any more strip of paper to be pasted on the whiteboard? Looking at the whiteboard, if you have something similar to what our friends have done, then we will go through that together now to see which of the diagrams are correct. How you should have complete drawing your diagrams using those strips of paper. So 6Es and receiving students, I'd like us now to look at the 3 strips of paper that are on the whiteboard. There shouldn't be any writing. You should have done that already. Okay, looking up at the first strip of paper. The strip of paper is being divided into how many parts? 6Es and receiving students? How many parts? Let's count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6 parts of a whole. Now, how many parts, or what does one part of that 6 represent? What does one part of this whole strip represent? One part of the strip of paper represents what fraction? Having in mind it has already been divided into 6 parts. Robert? Loud and clear?
1/6.
Okay, very good. One part of this strip of paper represents 1/6. For our friends in group 2, they have said that how many parts? 2 parts. I have asked you to shade in one part of the strip of paper. So thank you, group 2. It's a matter of us listening and following instructions correctly. Let's have a look at the second one. Or not the second one, let's have a look at the third one. The third one, the strip of paper is being divided into how many parts? 6 parts. And how many parts has been shaded? 1 part. So thank you to group 4. They have come up with the correct diagram of showing the fraction 1/6. Are we following 6's and receiving students? This is what you should have done on your diagrams, shading one part of the diagram or part of the 6, and it represents the fraction 1/6. I will just write this down below. Okay, each of these represent 1/6. Let's now have a look at the one in the middle. It's being divided into how many parts? 7 parts. Now what does one part of the strip of paper represent, or the diagram represent? Put your hand up. Onea? Loud and clear. Okay, very good. One part of this strip of paper represents 1/7. So the two expected answers that I wanted to get from the students are 1/6 from this first strip of paper and 1/7 from this strip of paper. Okay, one part of this represents 1/7, and one part of this strip of paper represents 1/6. So this is what you should have done in your diagrams. Now, these two diagrams are now going to be pasted on our fraction chart that we have been working on in our previous lesson. In your previous lesson, you came up with 1/3, folding a strip of paper into 3 parts, and also folding a paper into how many parts? 6's, how many parts? You folded one paper into 3 parts, and the other paper you folded into how many parts? 4 or 5? 5. So we did 2 of those in our previous lesson. So in our recapping exercise, we have come up with another 2 fractions that will now complete our fraction wall. Okay, in your previous lessons, these are the fractions that you have come up with. You did these 2 in your last lesson. Today, we have come up with diagrams representing 1/6, and also, what's the other fraction? 1/7. Now you can see that our fraction wall or the fraction chart is complete or incomplete? Complete. You will see that we start with the whole paper and we finish now with a fraction 1/8. But bear in mind, it will still continue all the way down to whatever fractions that you may come across to. So the space can be divided again. So for our case, because you have done this 1/8, we had to complete these others to fill in the gap on the fraction wall. So 6's and receiving students, this is how our fraction chart or the wall should have looked like. So when we are going through our lesson for today, we will be all using this chart in our exercises. So our lesson topic now for today is class equivalent fraction number 1. So there shouldn't be any writing. Now let's quickly go through what an equivalent fraction is. I'd like 6Cs and receiving students to now look at the PowerPoint and see the definition of equivalent fraction. What is equivalent fraction? Equivalent fraction represents the same number. One way to find equivalent fraction is to multiply or divide the numerator and denominator by the same number. Having in mind, in our previous lesson, we went through learning parts of a fraction, so you should now know which of the numbers represent a numerator and which one represents a denominator. Okay, let's have a look at this learning activity and see how it relates to the definition. 6's, are you following? Okay, we have the fraction as 4/5 equals, there is a number missing above this fraction bar here, and there is a number already given in the bottom part of the fraction. Now, I would like to ask you a question. Going back to the definition that is given, if you want to move from a smaller number to a bigger number, what would be the operation that you will use from the two, multiply or division? From 5 to 10, what is the operation that they use or that I would use? Operation meaning multiplication or division. Robert, loud and clear.
Division.
Division from 5 to 10. Our friend Robert have given us, we can use the operation which is division. Good try, Robert. Any other answers? Okay, let's have our other friend there.
Multiplication.
Okay, thank you, Lorraine. We multiply. For this case here, 5 to the other number, we use the operation which is multiplication. Now, what have we multiplied with this 5 here to get to 10? If we know our times table, 6's and receiving students, what are we going to multiply with 5 in order to come up with this answer, 10? Okay, Lorraine again. Okay, do we all agree 5 times 2? 6's, 5 times 2 is equals to how many? Okay, very good, Lorraine. 5 times 2, 10. Part is given, so we should find the number that we are going to multiply with this number in order to reach this number here. Now, the definition says, to find equivalent fraction, we either multiply or divide the numerator and denominator by the same number. The same number refers to this number here. So if we multiply this by 2, 4 will be multiplied by what number? 2 also. This is what it means by this. You multiply numerator and the denominator by the same number. So in this case, 4 times 2 is equals to, put your hand up. Angela?
8.
Okay, very good. 4 times 2 is equals to 8. So now, looking up on the whiteboard, this part here completes the definition. So fifth, the equal sign tells us that 8 over 10 is an equivalent fraction to 4/5. Are we following 6's and receiving students? I will repeat. 4/5 is equivalent to 8 over 10. When you are trying to find an equivalent fraction to another fraction, remember the number that you use to multiply the numerator must be the same number that you will use to multiply the top number of a fraction. Let's find another equivalent fraction to 4/5 before you go on into doing your actual exercise. 4/5, one part is given, the other part is not given. Now what would be a number multiplied by 4 in order to get to the answer 12? Madhu?
4 times 3.
Okay, Madhu says 4 times 3 is equals to 12. Is he correct? Yes, very good. So 4 times 3 is equals to 12. Now what would be the number that we are going to use to multiply with 5 in order to get the answer to that? Are we going to use a different number? Okay, my friend up the front, Caro?
3.
Okay, very good. He says 3. The same number that we used from up here will be used again down here. So 5 times 3 is equals to 5 times 3 is equals to 14 or 15? 15. So this is how to find an equivalent fraction by using multiplication. So today, in our lesson for today, we will be multiplying equivalent fraction using a fraction, and also to find another one we use the operation multiplication. In your other next lesson, you'll be using division as of what is being said from the definition. So today we will be multiplying fractions. Okay, just a diagram to help or elaborate more on the first fraction. We have 4/5. 4/5 can be shown as a diagram here. This has been divided into 5 parts, and 4 parts of the 5 parts have been shaded in. And the equivalent fraction to that is 8 over 10. So 8 over 10, the same strip of paper is again divided into 10 parts. So this is how it could have looked like. You will see that 4/5 is equivalent to 8 over 10. The lines are running through to the other fraction. So this fraction, as in the diagram form, is equivalent to this diagram here. 6's, are you following? So 5 parts on this strip of paper is again divided into how many parts? 10 parts. That is why we say that 8 parts of the 10 parts of those strip of paper. Okay, you have an exercise that you are going to work in your groups. Okay, you are going to work in groups to complete these 2 exercises in order for you to help your other friends. I would like you to write 5 equivalent fractions for each of the following. 3/5 equals 6 over a blank box. So you find numbers that will multiply with 3 to get the top numbers, and you find numbers to multiply, or the same number that you have chosen will be used again to multiply with 5 at the bottom. Write your fractions out like what I have done in the example. 3/5 is equal to 6/what fraction, so that you can work from fractions to fractions, just to make it easy for the group to understand how you have laid out your work. So you are to write 5 equivalent fractions. Having in mind parts of the fractions, equivalent fractions are already given. So once you see that one part is given, you try to work out what would be a number that you are going to use to multiply the unknown. So remember, the same number that you chose must be used for the both numbers in the fraction, the top number and the bottom number, or the numerator and the denominator. If you are not clear on what to do, please do raise your hand up so that we can help you. Write out your work neatly.
You clear on what to do?
Okay, if you don't want to ask a teacher to help you, you can ask your other friends. And this can also test you how well you have learned your times table. How well you can remember your times table. Do write out the number that you use to multiply to get the other number. Do not just write answers. You should have finished the first one.
How you get from here to here? How are you going to move from here to here? What are you going to use? What are you going to multiply with 3 to get to 6? Okay? 5 multiplied by 2 times 2 at the top, and the same number you times it at the bottom to get your next part of the fraction. Finish?
Okay, one student have finished exercise 1.
What did you multiply with 5 to get to 20? So make sure you write your times 1 times 2, and here you have times 3 times what gives you 9. 3. Okay, the same number that you multiply at the top must be written at the bottom. So you do that. You have your answers already written there.
Don't forget to write in the number that you have used to multiply in order to get to the other fraction. Okay, moving around, I think there's still a few students that are not sure on what to do. So I'd like us to put our biros down, and we'll go through just 1 or 2 of the exercise from exercise A. So we'll go through that together on the whiteboard. 6s and receiving students, we'll go through the first two equivalent fractions. Try to find out the first two equivalent fractions to 3/5, just to guide our other friends that are still not sure on how to find equivalent fractions to each of the exercise that you have asked to complete. So I'd like us now to look at the whiteboard. There shouldn't be any writing. Let's look at the whiteboard. 3/5 is equal to 6 over blank. We have been given the first part of the equivalent fraction, which is 6. Now, looking at these two numbers, what would be a number that we are going to use to multiply with 3 in order to get 6? Put your hand up if you have completed the first one. Okay, Christina, what is the number that you have used to multiply to get to 6? Loud and clear. You can just say out the number that you have used to multiply so I can write it in between the two fractions. What number you have multiplied with 3 to get to 6? 6 is already given.
2.
Okay, Christine have multiplied 2 with 3 and she got 6. Is it correct? Yes. Yes, so you should have written multiply by 2. So the same number that we have used up here will again be used at the bottom fraction or part of the fraction. So 5 times 2 is equals to 10, and 10 goes into the box, so the blank space that is given from the fraction. Let's now have a look at the other equivalent fraction to 3/5. 5 and 15 is given. What is a suitable number that we are going to multiply with 5 in order to get to 15? Okay, let's have Jason. Let's listen to what Jason would give to the class. What is the number he used?
3.
Did you just throw 3? What did you do? What is the operation that you use?
Times.
Okay, times. Always say multiply by 2. Say a complete sentence. 5 multiplied by 2. Did you say 2 or 3? 2 or 3? 3. Some of us are not listening. So 5 times 3 is 15. The same number that we use from the bottom part of the fraction will be again used at the top. So 3 times 3 is equals to what? Manuel? Quickly. Manuel says 3 times 3 is equals to 9. Is it correct? Yes, very good. Now we have already found two equivalent fractions to 3/5. 3/5 is equal to 6 over 10. 3/5 is equal to 9 over 15. I would like you to do the same with the other 3 equivalent fractions that you still yet to complete. So 6 is 10 receiving students. The two that are being written on the whiteboard are the two equivalent fractions to 3/5. So you can use that to complete the rest of the other equivalent fractions to 3/5. 6 is and receiving students, for those who haven't complete the exercise, We have done 2 just to help guide you again in order for you to get that complete. If you haven't, I'd like you to complete that for homework. Is that clear, 6Cs and receiving students? For 6Cs, I'll be collecting your books for checking. With that, we will now go on to our summary for today. If you can still remember, equivalent fractions represent the same number. To find an equivalent fraction, we multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. That is our summary for our lesson for today. Our key phrase is equivalent fraction. To the receiving teacher, our next lesson topic is still on equivalent fraction, number 2. So I'd like you to get yourself prepared. The lesson is a follow-up lesson from what we have today. The next lesson we are dividing equivalent fractions. So get whatever materials that you might need for your students for the exercises. With that, 6Cs and receiving students, we have come to the end of our lesson. Thank you for your participation.